Welcome to Tactical Talk. This is Zain. Today the topic of our show is the recent Palestinian and Israeli tensions and also Turkey Erdogan's policy shifts. The guest of our show is the contributing editor of Eurasia Future, Nedka Babliku. Welcome to our show, Nedka Babliku. This is Zain. It's a pleasure to have you on Tactical Talk.
It's a pleasure to be back.
Nedka, let's get to the first question. There's a long history between the Palestinian and Israeli clashes and tensions, but let's not get into the details. What has been the real reason behind the recent clash of Palestinian protesters and Israeli security forces?
Well, I think it's important to touch briefly on the history because these clashes have everything to do with how Israel came to exist, you see, with the help of a colonial power, Britain at the time, which had no right to give away Palestine to anybody in the first place. So let's get that clear. Now, this all began in 1948 with the Nakba, with the ethnic cleansing and displacement of over 700,000 Palestinians from their homes. And it's been Nakba every day for the Palestinians who are left starved, they are left slaughtered, they are cut off from the rest of the world. I mean, they haven't even got basic human necessities, water, food, and medical supplies, or any access to medical care. So they are living an utter nightmare and have been doing so since 1948. The March of Return it's a cry for help. It's a cry. The protests that claim the right of return of all these Palestinians who lost their homes, who were kicked out of their homes, and it's just, and every time Israeli army suppresses these protesters with lethal weapons and just lethal force. I mean, they shoot at children, infants, they shoot at women, the elderly, at the disabled, and it just goes on and on.
Nedka, I want to ask you a question which really confuses me at times. Why would the Israeli forces respond with such violence and high-handedness at civilian protesters who are unarmed? Obviously, they have, sticks and stones, but they're, unarmed generally. Why would the Israeli forces respond with such high-handedness? We see protests around the world where protesters have sticks, stones, they get, slightly rowdy at times, but no government, I've never seen any government, generally in the world who directly orders their forces to fire on the protesters. Why is such high-handedness by the Israeli state and government?
You're absolutely right. And the Palestinians, that's all they have. All they've got is sticks and stones. They haven't got weapons, So this is not a war in any shape or form. For a conventional war would require more than, two or more than military. Two countries, two entities on a sort of equal military standing in order to fight each other. But in this case, it's not a war because the Palestinians are defenseless, and you've got one nuclear armed state, a very aggressive one, Israel, and you've got defenseless people. So this is really genocide. It's not even an apartheid. Okay, this is genocide. Now, the reason I think that Israel uses great violence on these Palestinians is because, unlike the Black Lives Matter protesters who do not pose an existential threat to the United States' existence, okay, the Palestinians actually they pose a real existential threat to the very existence of the state of Israel. You see, Israel has to be on constant high alert. It has to remain militarized. It has to be at war constantly with somebody in order to sustain itself, because imagine if Israel didn't have nuclear weapons, there would be an Arab uprising, an invasion of Israel to liberate Palestine. I'm pretty sure that actually would happen. But that doesn't happen because Israel continuously uses its nuclear weapons as intimidation tactic. They threaten, they intimidate anybody, any state or individuals or groups that challenges the status quo, that dares criticize Israel, so really this really can't go on. And of course, they shouldn't shoot at protesters. This is insane that this is even happening in the 21st century, when the age of empires, of colonialism, is over. But they continue to, because they have the support of the United States, and because the international community is afraid of them, and that's the horrible truth. And without nuclear weapons, you see, Israel would cease to exist as a state. So it has to remain militarized. It has, in the Israeli psyche, they justify the aggression as a sort of defense thing, to defend their rights, their existence, which is just insane.
Nedka, I want to ask you a very important question. How many lives have approximately been lost in these clashes, and how many people have been injured?
So far, according to Gaza, to Palestinian medics, generally, there have been over 115 Palestinians who have been killed. And, well, this is mad. Over 13,000 injured. Now, let's face it, many, if not most, of these injured people will have died because they have no medical care. They have no supplies, no blood. They are denied treatment. So as we speak right now, there will be more that will have died, and there will be a bigger bloodbath as time goes on. This is unfortunately what the reality there. And, in the meantime, Benjamin Netanyahu himself has openly confessed to treating Al-Qaeda and ISIS members in Israeli hospitals, wounded members from the war in Syria. So, it's just going to get worse for them, I'm afraid.
Nedka, could you name some important Muslim leaders who have condemned this act of Israeli aggression?
Well, I'm afraid the sad thing is that most of the majority of the Muslim leaders have been decidedly silent on this. I mean, their response has been muted at best, with the exception of Imran Khan and Iran. Iranian leadership has consistently stood by the Palestinian liberation cause, and of course the Turkish President Erdogan, who has been so far the most vocal about this issue. With this exception, the silence is deafening. I mean, where is Sisi? Where is the Gulf? And it's just all we've heard is some feeble statements made by low-level officials. And Egypt was once the heart of Arabism. This is very disheartening to see, but good for Erdogan, good for him, for having the moral courage to actually say what so many people feel, but don't have the courage to say, because again, they are beholden to Israel in one shape or another.
Nedka, as you were saying, many world leaders have given some sort of statement regarding the Israeli aggression, but the most interesting reaction was that of Turkey's Erdogan. How did he react? What's your commentary on it? What's your opinion?
Well, indeed, Erdogan has been so vocal about this, and he called Israel a genocidal terrorist state. Now that's pretty strong, and he organized these rallies which were very well attended in Turkey for Palestine. What's more, he also expelled the Israeli ambassador to Turkey, which infuriated the Israelis, of course. So now the bilateral relations between these two countries are literally at an all-time low. They're even lower than they were, I believe, during the 2010 Gaza flotilla incident, where quite a few Turkish citizens were killed by Israeli soldiers as they were attempting to break the Gaza blockade to send humanitarian aid to Palestinians. So, and the relations then were pretty bad, but they made amends sometime later. But now you see things really have got very, very bad, and I can't see them improving anytime soon. But the thing with Erdogan is that, you know, he is the Sultan. He loves being the Sultan. Okay, he is the de facto leader of the Sunni world. It's not Saudi Arabia. Erdogan is the leader of the Sunni world. Whether, you know, people like it or not, that is the reality, or whether we agree with it or not. Now, you know, he has given many Sunnis a reason to unite, and he understands. He really understands the Palestinian cause, and he knows that the Palestinian cause will continue to be very dear to the hearts of many Muslims, including his. So he is playing on that, and, you know, whether it's genuine or not, as many people seem to dispute, well, I don't think that's relevant at all. I think so long as what he does is good for Palestine, that's good. It's good for me.
Nedka, we can agree to disagree, but Turkey's Erdogan has started to become really popular within the Muslim youth. His policies are also changing. Would you explain his geopolitical rifts and also shifts that could also be seen by his reaction to the Israeli aggression on the innocent protesters recently?
Indeed, Erdogan's geopolitical pivots have seen some extraordinary developments, and actually in quite a short space of time, if you think about it, in the last 2 or 3 years, really. We've seen Turkey now pivot away from its NATO ally, United States, and towards its Eurasian partners, Iran and Russia. And, you know, it's this trilateral sort of partnership. They are cooperating on some major, you know, things, from security, trade to military matters. So the partnership really is strengthening by the day. And now, where Israel is concerned, you see, as I said earlier on, Israel and Turkey's relations were pretty bad in 2010 when the Turks were killed during the Gaza flotilla incident. But they made amends, and even as recently as about 2 years ago, Israel and Turkey were talking about a joint gas pipeline. But this has been compromised now. This plan, and we've seen, and there's been quite a few reasons for this. And one of them, let's look into them. One of them is the Kurdish issue in Syria and Iraq and beyond. Israel has consistently supported Kurdish separatism in the region for its own interests. And of course, Erdogan wants to suppress any kind of Kurdish insurgency that threatens Turkey's national security. So, and Israel has been funding the Kurds for decades, let's not forget. So that's one issue. And the other issue is that as Israel gets closer to Egypt, Turkey's adversary, that won't go down very well with Turkey at all. And so now there are talks of a joint gas pipeline between Israel, Egypt, Greece, Cyprus, and Italy. Now, you know, Erdogan is very well aware of this, and he won't like this one bit. And I do think that the cooperation, this energy trade cooperation between Israel and Turkey is probably now out of the window already. But the thing that may really be the death knell of this partnership is Israel is threatening to recognize the Armenian genocide. And it seems increasingly likely that it might happen, but we don't know. But I do think it may well happen. And if that does happen, well, I think that relations will deteriorate so badly that that they'll get to a point of no return. But there is also the thing of the coup, the failed coup against Erdogan, which he blames on America and the FETÖ terrorists. Of course, that was another thing that precipitated this. Is the Turkish pivot away from NATO and towards its Asian partners.
Nedka, let's get to the last question. As an unbiased observer and also a journalist, What is your opinion? Why does the Israeli government and state treat the Palestinians the way they do? Don't you think their high-handedness and their aggressive behavior towards the Palestinians damages their perception within the global community? What is your opinion on that? Don't you think for their own sake and for their own perception, they should stop killing Palestinian innocent civilians?
Well, as I said earlier, you know, this isn't, Israel is not, this isn't a war, okay? This isn't even an apartheid situation. This is genocide. They want the Palestinians gone. They don't want them in subordinate positions, you know, like slaves. They want them literally gone. They want them vanished. They want to wipe Palestine off the map. They want to pretend that, you know, there never was a Palestine, that there never was a land, a multicultural, a multi-ethnic land, home for all. They just want to erase that from history and from the collective psyche. So that's what they're working at. So that's why they are the way they are with Palestinians, in addition to, you know, making certain that the Israel continues to exist. Now, they don't care about international law. They don't care about what the international community thinks. They do, but they don't, okay? Because they've got America's backing, and they've got, you know, the UK's backing and other countries. So they don't really care what the international community thinks. And they've been violating international law, well, since its existence. The very existence of it is illegal. When the UN washed its hands of Israel, that wasn't an approval. I mean, it was never fully approved. That, you know, washing one's hands of something doesn't equate to approval, right? So, so that's what, you know, that's the problem here. And the other problem is that it's a racist state. It's a, you know, it's even racist. It even discriminates against its own, with the Ethiopian Jews who went to Israel hoping for a better life, and they are treated like fourth-class citizens. They are subject to constant violent attacks, which just shows that Israel is not a Jewish state. It's not even a Jewish state. It's a racist. It's a European supremacist state who even hates its own Jews. And the only solution to this, the only realistic solution to peace, because Israel isn't interested in peace, okay? It isn't, because it's not a real state. Real states are interested in peace and cooperation. Israel is interested in war because it's the only way it can sustain itself from, you know, it can protect itself from the rightful owners of that land that rightfully want their land back. The only solution is denuclearization of Israel. You know, if Israel didn't have nukes, it would be a very different place. And, you know, it really should, the whole thing should be one state. One state should be established with equal human rights for all and equal democratic powers for all. But will Israel agree to that? Will it stand for that? That's questionable, because Israel isn't interested in unity, in living in harmony, in, you know, in peace. It's not. So the question is, you know, what would it do? Would it, you know, we don't know. It just waits to be seen.
Thank you so much, Nedka Babliku, for being on Tactical Talk. It was a pleasure having you.
Always a pleasure being here.
This was Nedka Babliku, the co-founder and also contributing editor for the Eurasia Future. We were discussing the recent clash between the Palestinians, protesters, and also the Israeli government, and also Turkey's Erdogan's geopolitical and policy shifts. Until the next episode of Tactical Talk, this is Zain Khan. Take care and goodbye.